The diner was alive with noise that night. Fryers hissed, forks scraped, conversations clashed against each other like waves. Outside, the rain came down in sheets, streaking neon against glass, painting the whole street in trembling red and blue. Inside, no one paid much attention when the door creaked open and a soaked little figure stepped in. She couldn't have been more than 12. Hood drawn tight, sneakers collapsed with holes, a plastic grocery bag clutched to her chest as if it were a lifeline. Her hair was wet, plastered against her forehead. Her lips moved nervously, like she was practicing the words before they left her mouth. And then she said it. "Can I play for food?" It wasn't loud, barely carried over the clatter of dishes. But it was enough. Enough for a couple of heads to turn. Enough for a trucker at the counter to smirk into his coffee. Enough for the laughter to start. "Play?" One man chuckled. "What is this, America's Got Talent?" The girl's eyes dropped to the floor, but she lifted a hand and pointed toward the corner, toward the half-dead upright piano that sat abandoned by the jukebox. Its varnish cracked, its keys yellowed. Most diners didn't even notice it anymore. "You mean that thing?" the waitress asked, a tired laugh in her voice. "Sweetheart, that piano hasn't been tuned since Reagan was in office." A ripple of laughter rolled across the booths. Someone muttered, "She's just begging. Can't even be honest about it." But the girl didn't move, didn't flinch. There was a steadiness in her small frame, the kind that doesn't come from confidence but from desperation, from knowing you have nothing left to lose. She walked past them all, past the cook leaning out of the kitchen, past the smirking trucker, past the waitress shaking her head. Her sneakers squeaked against the linoleum. She reached the piano, set her bag down carefully at her feet, and placed her trembling hands on the keys. The first notes wavered, off-key broken. People chuckled again. Someone called out, "Told you it's junk." But then it shifted. Her shoulders squared, her eyes closed, and suddenly the music pouring out of that battered upright was something else entirely. It wasn't practice. It wasn't random. It was command. Melodies layered, rippling, flowing. Classical flourishes melted into raw jazz runs. Her hands blurred, racing across chipped keys like they'd been waiting years to break free. Notes rose and swirled, filling every inch of that diner with a sound no one could laugh at anymore. The cook dropped his spatula. A couple froze mid-bite, forks hovering in the air. The waitress stopped wiping her hands on her apron, mouth hanging open. Even the old jukebox seemed to lean into the sound, silent for the first time in years. And in the back, at a corner booth where no one had paid him much attention, a man in a navy coat leaned forward, his glass of bourbon forgotten. His eyes, sharp, calculating, the eyes of someone used to owning entire rooms, were locked on the girl. When she finished, she was shaking. Sweat and rain streaked her face. She sat frozen, hands hovering above the keys, chest heaving. Silence. Then someone coughed. Another laughed nervously, clapping once. And that's when the man in the corner spoke. Again. His voice wasn't raised, but it sliced through the room. Heads turned. The girl looked up, startled. "Play it again," he said, standing now, tall, silver hair glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Sir," the waitress stammered. "She's just..." "Play," he ordered, eyes still on the girl. And so she did. This time it was fire. Faster, bolder, like the music itself was a weapon she finally got to wield. Every note was defiance. Every run up the keys was survival turned into something beautiful. And when she stopped, the silence wasn't awkward. It was reverent. The man stepped forward. He pulled out his wallet, laid $100 bill on the piano. Then another. Then another. Gasps rippled through the diner. The girl's lips trembled. "For food." "No," he said, voice steady. "For the world to hear you play again." That man was Vincent Cole, billionaire media mogul. The kind of man who didn't just own companies, he owned narratives. His name whispered through boardrooms, splashed across headlines. And yet, that night, standing in a greasy diner with a half-starved child and a broken piano, Vincent felt something he hadn't in decades. He felt small, human, and alive. The story of the homeless piano girl exploded overnight. Someone's shaky phone video hit the internet, 13 million views in 24 hours. News anchors called it heartwarming. Twitter called it fake. Comment sections split. She's a scam. She's a genius. Somebody get her help. Somebody's exploiting her. Meanwhile, Vincent had her sitting in front of a Steinway Grand in his penthouse. Her tiny hands dwarfed by perfect ivory. She played with the same fire, but softer now, steadier. "Where did you learn this?" Vincent asked quietly. She kept her eyes on the keys. "Mama, before she got sick. She said music was the only thing nobody could take from you." Vincent swallowed hard. He thought of his own daughter, estranged, lost to a divorce, years of choosing work over family. He hadn't spoken to her in 5 years. Weeks passed. He got her tutors, clothes, a school placement under a false name. She laughed for the first time in years. And for the first time in decades, so did Vincent. But the world wasn't kind. Her first recital was chaos. Reporters shoved microphones in her face, desperate for a sound bite. Critics sneered. "She's just a viral story," one scoffed. "The internet will forget her next week." Under the spotlight, her hands trembled. The audience whispered. The music refused to come. She stared at the keys, tears building. And then she saw him, Vincent, standing tall in the wings, his eyes locked on hers. Not as a billionaire, not as a savior, just as someone who believed. She took a breath, placed her fingers on the keys, and unleashed the storm. That night, she didn't just play. She shattered people. The music wasn't polished. It was raw, broken in places, but it was real. People cried openly. Strangers rose to their feet, roaring. The world had to face her, had to admit that greatness had been hidden in plain sight. And in the very back row, the waitress from that diner sobbed into her hands, shame burning through her laughter from that night. Headlines screamed the next morning. From sidewalks to symphony halls, the homeless prodigy who changed everything. But for her, the real victory wasn't fame. It was eating breakfast in peace, her stomach full, her mama's words alive in her fingers. Because she knew now. They could laugh, they could doubt, they could try to ignore her, but they would never silence her again.